5 unique burial sites with amazing histories. Number 5. Plain of Jars. The mysterious Plain of Jars in Laos has been of archaeological interest since its discovery, estimated to have been created around 3,000 years ago. In itself, it is unique, as we covered back in 2011 in our list of unique places around the world. At the time, the exact nature of why the jars existed was unknown, bar a few burials found in the jars. A discovery in April 2016 revealed evidence that the pots were used in a specific burial practice, meaning the burials found earlier were related to the purpose of the Plain of Jars and were simply an isolated occurrence. These included the discoveries of a bone pit with a limestone block placed on top, bones found in special ceremonial vessels for burial, and a traditional grave. This leads archaeologists to confirm that the Plain of Jars was used for preparation and burial of the deceased. Speculation is that the jars were used to decompose the bodies until they were bones, at which point they could be buried. As it stands, however, it's still only speculation. Until more burial preparations can be unearthed, it's still early days to confirm or deny the pot's exact usage. One thing is sure, though, the Plain of Jars was designed to be the preparation spot for the deceased. Number 4. Wazine American Cemetery, Plot E. Wazine American Cemetery plots AD are standard enough they for use to represent 6,000 American soldiers who died in World War I fighting in France. They were well maintained, easy to access, and a timeless honor for those who have passed. To those who visit the cemetery, it's easy to believe that plots A, D are the only plots the cemetery holds. But there is another plot that's surrounded with overgrown shrubbery and not mentioned on the cemetery's website or map. The only way to access it is to walk through the cemetery superintendent's office, and even then, the door to it is usually locked. This is the fate of Plot E, a cemetery with 94 bodies of people executed for crimes committed around World War II, including rape, murder, and desertion. Each gravestone is a marker the shape and size of an index card, which is embedded in the grass with just a number to identify it. The people buried in Plot E are positioned so that their backs are turned away from the main cemetery site. No U.S. flag is allowed to fly over Plot E, either. Due to this, Plot E has been labeled an anti-memorial, which acts as a stark contrast to the honored dead in the other 4 plots. Number 3. Sutton Hoo Mound I. At first glance, Sutton Hoo is nothing to write home about. The burial sites for Sutton Hoo appear as 18 bumps in the earth in the English countryside near Woodbridge. These mounds, however, are named Britain's very own Valley of the Kings, as they for 7th century had royal burial mounds. Over time, especially in the Tudor times, these mounds were broken into and the treasures within looted, but 2 escaped unharmed: the 1st and the 18th mounds. Although each mound has its own interesting history, it's very lucky that Mound 1 survived the looting, as it contains the richest burial in all of Europe, with historians believing that it belonged to one King Redwald. The burial chamber at the center of the mound contained Byzantine silverware, jewelry, a set for feasting, a purse containing 37 gold coins, 3 coin-based blanks to round up the coin total to 40, 2 gold ingots, and an iron helmet. The iron helmet became an iconic representation of Sutton Hoo, the unofficial face of the burial site. These treasures were donated to the British Museum. The stunning part is, those are all the tricks that King Redwald kept under his posthumous sleeve. While no longer present, evidence points toward the fact that he was also buried with a 30-meter-long boat. Of course, after such a long time, the boat has been eroded by the acidic soil. But the boat left a fingerprint in the sand of the burial mound, so we know that it was once there. Number 2. Les Cimetières d'Anciens. Les Cimetières d'Anciens is a cemetery found in Asnières-sur-Seine, northwest of Paris. The name of this cemetery translates to the Cemetery of Dogs, and that's just what it is: a place of burial for some of man's departed best friends. Since its opening in 1899, The cemetery has become le cimetière des chiens et autres animaux domestiques, expanding the range to other animals. This means that there are lots of cats buried there now as well as a few horses. You'll even find a few exotic pets, such as a monkey. Although the graveyard has been around for over a century, the historical stories of the cemetery come from the graves themselves. As it was opened before both of the World Wars, the graveyard lends itself naturally to being the resting place of beloved service dogs that lost their lives during wartime. One grave is for Barry, who served as a trench dog in World War I. He is depicted on his gravestone as a dog with a child being carried on his back. The inscription reads, "He saved the lives of 40 people. He was killed by the 41st." According to the graveyard staff, the story behind Barry was nefty that the 41st person betrayed him. Barry carried 40 of the wounded from a battlefield and died of exhaustion after delivering the 41st child to safety. Number 1. Savannah International Airport. Richard and Catherine Dotson's 17th century graves are a curious case. Although their burials were nothing too grand, they didn't become truly unique until 1980, long after they died. The land in Savannah in which Richard and Catherine were buried was originally granted to the couple by a king. The Dotson family kept a farm and buried their dead there. The land was relatively undisturbed until World War II when the U.S. Army Corps wanted to take over some of the Dotson land to build runways for bombers and fighter craft. The modern Dotson family allowed the airstrip to be built with two conditions. The Army had to pay to move the family graveyard into Bonaventure Cemetery, and Richard and Catherine's graves had to stay on the land they were granted by royalty. The family's demands were met, and everyone except the original couple was moved. The airport grew into a commercial and military airport, and the original couple was left undisturbed until 1980, when the airport wanted to expand runway 10, where the couple's graves were in the way. Permission to move them was not granted, so the airport did the next best thing: they set the graves within the runway itself as a permanent addition to the airport. Since then, pilots landing at the runway have asked air traffic control if they really just passed a pair of graves on the runway. Some pilots even ask to use the runway with the graves so they can see them.